Hi, welcome back to DMAD Marine Mammal Research Association's 18th lesson in QGIS Course 2. Today's a really interesting lesson for me because we're going to see that actually QGIS is hiding some of the information for us to try and make our map look better. And we're going to look at how we can play around with a couple of the settings in the labeling to make sure that we avoid any problems with missing information when we run into this. So you'll remember this is how we left our last lesson, with each of our zones and every potential habitat area that was more than 0.2 kilometers squared was labelled. Except if you look in an area here, you can see that we actually have multiple habitat zones here, which must be more than 0.2 kilometers squared. And a really curious thing about QGIS is that if we double click on our label and come into labeling and then go down to the option on the left hand side which is rendering format, this one down here, that actually we can see that this box that says show all labels for this layer, including colliding labels. So what QGIS is doing is it's realizing that some of the labels that we wanted to create have collided, and it's actually turned it off. Personally, I think this is a bit of a dangerous option because it means that we don't have all the information on the map and we're not aware that there's information missing from the map. But as you can see, the reason it does it, so if we click apply, the reason it does it is because now we've got all this overlapping text, and actually it's no more use to us than it was before, because we still can't get any more information off the map because we don't know what this 0.41 and what this 0.58 kilometers squared is associated with. So one thing that we could do is that we could go back into our edited dialog and we could change everything to a more reasonable scale. So I'm going to go in and do that now. You remember last time we clicked on this E, but actually we can just edit the expression straight in this value. So I'm going to change this to 1 and then click apply. And you'll see that's helped out quite a bit, but we've still got this section here and it's 2.42, so I'm just going to make it 2.43. And that's great, and we now have no overlapping labels, but we also have very, very little information, and we only have 7 labels left of our original 20 or whatever it was, which obviously isn't ideal. So another way we could approach this, I'm just going to turn all those labels back on. So I'll take it back to 0.2, which is what we had already. Another way we could approach this might be to go into our text format and we can make the sizes smaller, so we could take this down to 6 for example, but now it's virtually unreadable and we still have some overlapping information. So I'll take that back to what it was. Now you'll see if we zoom into an area, the way that QGIS is defaulted to work is that the text remains the same size. So this is still 10 point text in Arial, I think it was, regardless of whether we're zoomed in at 1 to 60,000 like we are now, or whether we're zoomed in at 1 to 450,000, which is what we were zoomed in at before. So I can see that if I zoom into an area, so say I take this area here and I go down to say 1 to 60,000, we can see that actually we can see all of our labels, which is obviously more useful. I do not need to do that, but right, brilliant. So we know that at 1 to 60,000 we're fine, and so if we are just using our obviously if we wanted to print the maps, then we'd have to print a lot of small maps at this scale. But if we're just using our GIS environment between us and other colleagues, or just for ourselves, then actually this is probably fine being able to view it at this scale. But as we go back out to zoom to our full layer, then obviously we have the same problem again. So I zoom to layer, and we've got all of our overlapping layers. So one thing we can do is, if we go back into potential areas, go into rendering again, and we've got this area called scale dependent visibility, and we can change this to 0 and 60,000, which might be the obvious way to do things. So if I change this to 0 and 60,000, you'll see that absolutely nothing changes. And the reason for this is because actually it's the opposite way around to what our intuition might think. And actually this should be the 60,000, because this is the most, if you hover over the bar, QGIS tells us that this is the maximum scale, so the most zoomed in. So obviously if we're zoomed in at a scale of 1:1, then we want to be able to see our labels. So if we were at actual life size, we'd want to be able to see our labels, because we could definitely fit them in there. So that's the maximum zoomed in, and this is the minimum scale. So this is the most zoomed out. So this is actually where we want our 1 to 60,000. So now if I click apply and OK, you'll see that they disappear. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to set the scale to 1 to 60,000 and zoom in. And unfortunately, the way QGIS works means that we can't quite do that. So I'm just going to set it to 58,000. And you'll see that they are zoomed in. And I think actually if we stay at this same scale without moving, we should be able to do it. Yeah, so now we can see at 160,000 we can see all of our zones. I'll change that to 1 to 60,001, and you see that they disappear. So really it's as simple as that. We now have a more manageable layer, especially if we're moving around our map. But they do disappear if you drop below that. So if you go above that 160,000. So that's great. It means if we're interested in an area, so sort of this area where we've got the two sources of the rivers here, it would appear, or perhaps they go into lakes, I'm not sure. But where we've got the two rivers very close together, we can have a look and see that actually we've got quite a few of these areas nice and close together. And we've got this on 0.2, but if we were really interested in every tiny block, so at the moment we've got blocks which are 200 meters by 200 meters. If we were interested in smaller blocks, we could just change that down and just increase the scale. So if I go into potential areas and change this to 1 to 40,000, then I could probably get away with taking this down to 0.1. So if we click apply, obviously they've disappeared because we're not at 40,000. I'll take this into 40,000 now. Yeah, and you can see we've got everything. These two have popped up now as well, which are 0.16 and 0.17. So there is a bit of fiddling you have to do to get this right, but it's a really useful tool to make sure that we're displaying all the information that we have available to us, but without having loads of overlapping layers. So I hope you found that useful. In the next lesson we're going to look at the very last thing to do with this example, and that is how we can take our raster that we had. Oh, so that's not the full raster, this is the full raster. we could take this raster and how we can use this raster and the DEM, say the digital elevation model that we have here, to make contour lines. Okay, that's great. I'll see you then.